Good Shabbos, good Shabbos. As you come in, you're invited to come sit as close as you feel comfortable sitting. And as you sit down, if you're sitting next to someone you don't know yet, you can say hi. And if you're sitting down next to someone you know really well, you can say hi. Shabbat Shalom. How sweet to be together. How great to be entering Shabbat. Thank God for Shabbat. How wonderful to come into community and to get to welcome in guests. I wonder, is there anyone who's here in this room for the very first time? This is your first time at Shir Tikva. Welcome. Welcome. Are you visiting from out of town? Okay, well, welcome from wherever you are close by. What a gift. Is there anyone who's coming here for the first time in a long time? Welcome back. It's my deep honor to welcome you, each of you, as we come into Shabbat. My name is Rabbi Ariel. What a gift to be leading with Jake and with Brian tonight. And what a tremendous honor to get to welcome my teacher, Rabbi Sid Schwarz, in from the East Coast, everyone, from the DC area. From Maryland. Sid has been a profound teacher for me for many, many, many years, and he has heard a lot about Shir Tikva over these many years, and it is really a gift to be able to open this sanctuary to a beloved teacher, and I can't wait for him to get to teach all of us tonight. So just a little roadmap of where we're going. We're going to have a short service tonight. I know. We're moving and then we're going to have a potluck, and then we're going to have a Dvar Torah and a chance to learn together. So I know. So just for everyone, both on Zoom and in the space, I just want you to get ready. So we're going to have a short service, and you know it's me saying it, but I'm going to try my very best. And then we're going to nash, and then we get to learn with Rabbi Sid. What a mechaya. So just so you can stay oriented, but first we get to bless. We're coming into Shabbat, and we have two really special blessings tonight. We have a birthday blessing and a baby naming. And so it's my honor to be able to invite up first Evan Mulholland, who is turning 50, to honor us by lighting the candles. And we honor you by letting you use our magic candle lighting wand. Oh, thank you. So here you go. So you'll light from here, and then you just push it on down. Gotcha. Yeah. Now it's perfect. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Happy birthday to you, Evan. For your birthday, in honor of your birthday, I want to bless you with two different valences of the Hebrew letters for the number 50. So as you enter this new decade, I want to bless you. This is the 50 in Hebrew is the letter mem, which makes the sound or And so I want to bless you both with the feeling of delicious arrival, that feeling of savoring, the of this decade, and also the of this decade. Like, I didn't think of that before. I didn't know that yet. This feeling of openness and of savor. And also, if we want to move from one letter to two, now I'm going to do math in public. There's another way to make 50. Is this true now? Now I'm feeling nervous. Oh, I'm actually right. There's another way of making 50, which actually then opens you up to a sense of belonging in the now. And so I want to bless you with savor, with that sense of presence and endurance. May this be a miracle of a decade for you. And thank you so much for coming to celebrate with us. Mazal tov. It's also my honor to please welcome up Bob and Mel to bless their beautiful baby, Althea. And we were in Powderhorn Park together not so very long ago on another golden sunny day. So I'm going to give you, each have your own packet. So Althea, we get to bless you now. Are you ready? Baruch haba, blessed is the one who comes to enter a covenant and community in this wonderful way. In each generation, we reconnect and revitalize our relationship with the sacred and our people. And we find our own unique way of being part of our culture and our community. So I would invite each of you to read one of these paragraphs.
Okay. We bless you with unconditional love. May you always know that your family cherishes you and values you not only for your achievements, but because you are a unique and beautiful human whose life we are privileged to share.
We give you the gift of curiosity. We want to share our love of learning with Althea and help you to appreciate the complicated and magical world into which you have come. We also know you will know injustice and bless you with the courage and wisdom to take part in restoring a broken world to wholeness.
You're ready to talk, love. So it's said that there are 3 names by which a person is called: the one they're given at birth, the one that people used to call them, and the one that they earn for themselves. And the Hebrew name that you received today, sweet one, oh my goodness, such presence. This marks another beginning of your life's journey, and may this name be one that serves you well, that connects you to your family and to your culture, and allows you to discover the name that you will earn for yourself. What a mechaya. So I'm going to bless you with your name now, love. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו קיימת ילדה הזאת להוריה ויקרא שמה בישראל ליבי ולבלה. ייי! וישמח האב ויוצאת חלצה ותגל עמו בפרי בטנה, ככתוב ישמח אביך ואמך ותגל יולדתך. הודו לאדוני כי טוב, כי לעולם חסדו. זאת הקטנה ליבי ולבלה, גדולה תהיה, כשם שנכנסה לברית, כן תיכנס לתורה ולחופה ולמעשים טובים. Oh, dear one, oh, Libi Velvela, may you be sustained, may you be known far and wide as Libi Velvela, and may you bring transformation to this world that needs it. And as you enter into the covenant of community, so may you enter into a life of learning, of loving relationships, and of good deeds. So I'm going to invite you to, please, to say a blessing in community that you have said once before.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav banu lech nisa b'ivrit shel Abraham v'Sarah.
Amen. Which is a blessing that says you're accepting your responsibility to plant your child like a seed in community so she can grow in the tradition and help our tradition grow. So I'm going to bless you all with Birkat Kohanim, with a blessing that parents have been saying for their children over every Shabbat for many, many, many generations. So you're both doing a great job already snuggling her. You're doing good. Yevarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך shalom. Ken Yehi Ratzon. And as Althea is so very vibrant and present to us, may we also sing a very present song of celebration to her. Simin tova, mazel tova, mazel tova, simin tova, mazel tova, mazel tova, simin tova, mazel tova, mazel tova, simin tova, Yelanu, 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 Ulecho Yisrael, Yelanu, Yelanu, Ulecho Yisrael. It's true, community can be overwhelming sometimes, but may it also be a source of blessing for you and for both of you as you become the amazing parents that you already are. Mazal tov to you. Yay. So let's sing, everyone. Let's turn together to page 12 as we open to Shabbat in song. Lechu neranena l'Adonai Nahariya letzuyishenu nekadem avana We'll continue on page 13, the second paragraph, Yismechu Hashamayim.
Yismechu Hashamayim v'tagel haaretz
Yiram hayam umelo Yismechu Hashamayim v'tagel haaretz Yiram hayam umelo We'll turn to our blue sheets as we sing Ana Bechoach and untangle ourselves from the week just past. As we sing these first words, because it occurs to me that there are people in this room who are at a funeral today. And there are people in this room who were at the Whipple building an hour ago. And there are people today in this room who felt afraid and who felt determined and who felt joy and sorrow. And we are still knitting ourselves up as we enter Shabbat. And so I'm going to invite us as we sing to I'm going to invite our instruments to stop, who sound so beautiful, so they'll come back. But I want us to hear ourselves and hear each other as we come into this moment of Shabbat, okay? Ana b'choach gedulat yemincha tatir tzerura tatir tzerura kabel rinat rinat amcha sarveinu tareinu nora ana b'choach gedulat yemincha tatir tzerura tatir tzerura kabel rinat rinat amcha sarveinu tareinu nora ay 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 I believed in solid ground until I saw the earth in motion in the wind of steady change and in the ever-rolling ocean. Ana b'choach gedulat yemincha tatir tzerura tatir tzerura kabel rinat rinat amcha sarveinu tareinu nora. Yay. Oh, I love that. Just, I hope I don't need to say it at this point, but all generations' voices and noises are very, very welcome. I love those noises so much. And I'm grateful to be in a community that loves those noises so much. So we're going to turn now to page 20 to Lechado D. And when we get to the 9th verse, it's our tradition to rise in body, to root in spirit, and if you wish to go out into the darkness of 50th Street, to rush to greet Shabbat all the way out there. Sometimes she comes in an airplane. That's exciting.
A loud one.
A loud airplane, that's right. So you're welcome to find your way. And if you're at home, please open your doors and windows and welcome Shabbat in.
דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשכחי ומה תהמי. בך יחסו אני העמי, ונבנתה עיר רצילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. והיו למשיסה שוסייך, ורחקו כל מבלייך. יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, כמסוס חתנה כלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תריצי. אל יאיש בן פרצי, ונשמחה ונגילה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. בואי ושלום, עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה. תוך אמונה עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. ידי די 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 לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
Shabbat Shalom. We lingered outside because it was balmy and also because there was a plane. So we had to sing her all the way home. So we're going to turn together, please, to page 28. And we will rise en route as we call each other into Mariv, into our evening service. Ya la 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 ya la 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 la. Ay, la 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 la. Ay, la 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 la. La 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 la. Ay, la 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 la. turn together to page 34. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Leolam Vaed. You may be seated. Page 36. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. We'll turn to page 40.
Sorry,
It's
temperature
okay.
changes. Love the fall.
Surprises. We're going to sing this one a cappella. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, I la 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 la, I la 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 la. Bi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, bi kamocha nadav hakodesh, Torah tehilot osefet, Torah tehilot osefet. מלכותך ראו בניך, פוקע ים לפני משה ומרים. זה אלינו ואמרו, זה אלינו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני קהל ישראל. Page 42, we'll pray for peace and protection. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ותקננו בעצה טובה מלפניך. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום, והעמידנו שומרנו לחיים, ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך, ותקננו בעצה טובה מלפניך. ברוך אתה אדוני הפורס סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ועל ירושלים. We'll turn to page 44.
ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם. ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
We'll turn together to page 46. We'll rise en route, offering this first kavanah aloud together and taking time in quiet for personal prayer. When you're ready, we'll join together on page 62.
עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו. ותבל, ואמרו,
We'll take time now to pray for healing of body, for healing of spirit. We'll sing the words that are found in the middle of page 253, and we'll sing, and then we'll pause, and I invite you, please, to share aloud names of people that you're praying for, and then we'll seal our prayer in song. Mi shebeirach avotenu mekor haberacha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Tonight we're praying for
Jill Porter, Audrey Porter.
Mi shebeirach imotenu mekor haberacha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. So this is where our service is going to feel texturally slightly different. We are not going to have our Devar Torah right now. And I think I'm also going to save our Birkat Kihila, our community blessing, until the end of Rabbi Sid's teaching, so that way those who are on Zoom can just incorporate and weave their blessings then, so that you, of course, don't have to stay up late, dear Zoomers. But I think I'm going to hold our Birkat Kihila until the very end of our time together tonight, so we can, because I want to make sure we're giving as much time as possible to Kadisha Tom. Okay? Thanks for just being along this process with me. You're watching someone who loves to daven for hours make a very short service. So here we go, loves. We're going to rise in body and in spirit on page 284 for Aleinu, for V'hashevota. Be seated. So in our tradition, we have been singing for more than 2 years, Oseh Shalom before Kadisha Tom, in recognition of all of the people who have been killed, the tens of thousands of people who have been killed in Israel-Palestine since October 7th, recognizing that this planet is full of warfare, actually. And we have been holding a very specific kind of vigil, recognizing that there are too many names. We will never know how many people have died. We'll never know how many people have been killed. And what we can do, part of what we can do is continue to hold open our space for grief, for rage, and for conviction. And so just holding us tonight as we sing.
עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל יושבי תבל. ואמרו, אמרו, Amen. The tradition in our community is to share brief words of people that we're remembering as part of Kadishat Tom. And so as I read our community's list, I'll invite you, if you're remembering someone whose name I say aloud, please raise your hand. Hello. And Jake will come over to you with a microphone. This is Jake's first time as a microphone runner, so
raise your hand high.
raise your hand high, exactly. And thank you so much, Jake. And if I come to the end of the list and I've not said the name of your loved one, please raise your hand at that point, and Jake and I will find you so you can share their name and share it. And really tonight, if we can think about 1 to 3 sentences and try to, thank you. So first, I want to begin by wishing comfort to Harry Adler and his whole family after the death this week of his mother, Sally, who will be buried on Sunday. We're in Shloshim for Mark Schoenbaum, husband of Jeanette George and beloved member of Shir Tikva. And we're also in Shloshim for Reb Arthur Waskow, beloved teacher, inspiration.
I say that in the expression of Reb Arthur, who found and taught that God is in all of our breath, and that Yah, hallelujah, is what we breathe to each other. We breathe, he taught, we breathe out to the trees, and the trees breathe into us, and we're all connected. He was a scholar, a teacher, a storyteller extraordinaire. He wrote maybe 40 books, 2 of which were published for his 92nd birthday last week. He was determined to get those words out. I was honored, very, very honored to serve with him on, in an organization he started 40 years ago, the Shalom Center. I was on the board for 10 years, and every day I just feel so happy I got to be in his orbit. Very fitting that tonight we're talking about, thinking about, remembering Arthur, who could not separate Torah from social justice. Arthur was arrested dozens of times, including in this past year with his activism about Israel and Palestine, which he's been talking about for decades. If you don't know his work, you could pick up any one of 40 or so books. And I know the subject of this weekend is very much about what he was about, which is Torah and social justice.
We observe the yahrzeits of Wayne Bannock, father of Scott Dietz, Ida Baratz, grandmother of Karen Desnick, Stanley Breen, father of Andrea and Rachel Breen.
So our dad died 33 years ago, I think it was. a long time ago, and there's lots I could say about him, but I'll say two brief things. One is being at the Whipple building, I don't know what it's called, wherever we were, that awful place, made me think a lot about him and what he taught all of us about social justice. But what I've been thinking more about this week is I have 3 kids that he never met, the first one born years after he died, and this week I was speaking with them. They weren't able to be here tonight, they're out of town, and I was speaking to them about they wanted to light a candle for him and hear some stories about him, and it made me think a lot about how we bring people that are connected to us into our worlds that when they never even met them, and the way we keep those connections, and how happy he would be that his grandchild that he never met is lighting a candle at 29 years old for him.
Barbara Brooke, mother of Eric. Paulo Castellano, husband of Hillary Cooperman and father of Giancarlo and Tesla. Lee Cutts, grandmother of Andrea Kircher. Sam Ersling, father of Jay. David Everts, beloved member of Shir Tikva. Allen Ginsberg, cousin of Carolyn Levy. Gustav Glazer, father of Fred. Edward Greenberg, nephew of Steve and Keith Johnson. Rose Hecker, aunt of Rachel Royblatt. Tyler Miles Herman, nephew of Dvorah Herman. Hannah Holzer, cousin of Robert Goldman. Scarlett Noel Ip, friend of Tova Gorman Bear. Katie Caborn, beloved member of Shir Tikva. Monique Leclerc, grandmother of Sego. Max Levy, father of Ray. Morris Lieberman, father of Jay and grandfather of Hannah. Myra Lorberblatt, mother of Phyllis Kahn. Barak Mucha, grandfather of Audrey Friedman. Annette Rudoy Wiener Shapiro, mother of Michael Wiener. Red and Shirley Ruff, grandparents of Fiona Hensley. Sherry Ann Muellerly Saltzman, mother of Emily. Carol Silber, mother of Larry and grandmother of Naomi and Emily. Lawrence Weinstein, father of Miriam.
It's really impossible to summarize my father as the breadth and depth of his life in a few sentences. So I just want to say I was always very proud to be his daughter. He was such a kind, compassionate, and generous man, and really a leader in his community. And he is the kind of person who really made a difference.
Betty Weisberg, mother of Luke and Freddie.
Our mom was, she was funny. She was a great cook. She put way too much spice on everything, which was a delight. And she knew how to make a thing, make a meal, make an event, host on a moment's notice. It was a skill beyond all. And the more I sort of learn about her life, I realize she went through a lot. And as a kid, you don't know that. So I'm learning to appreciate that as an adult, and the distance that she traveled between being parented and then parenting us. So I'm appreciating that about her tonight.
Senator Paul and Sheila Wellstone, beloved members of the Shir Tikva community and dear friends of so many. Would someone, as someone who never got to meet Senator Wellstone, would someone please tell a story? Thank you. Thank you, Luke.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
There was a moment that, all right, details aren't important. There was a moment he was being pitched on a piece of legislation from a group of folks here in Minnesota, and it was related to employment and training and to workforce development. And he listened to the pitch and he understood it, and then he said, so this is just about helping people find work, and helping people in particular who won't find, who are going to have the hardest time finding work, find work. Is that right? And everybody around the table was, yes. And he was like, why will anybody oppose this? And we said, well, there's a lot of reasons. And he said, well, they're really bad reasons. And we said, you're right. And he said, well, let's just go do this. And he was like, boom. So, yeah.
May we keep telling stories. I'm going to ask, are there people whose names I did not say? Please raise your hands, and Jake and I will come.
I actually was remembering Paul Wellstone. I was in high school when he tragically passed away, but I will never, ever forget that we all do better when we all do better.
So please raise your hands.
So Abra Quinn, a dear friend of mine, died 2 days ago, and her father, Patrick Quinn, died 3 weeks earlier. And the briefest story about Patrick is he had great social skills in groups of 1 to 3 at a bar, but in large groups, he was a son of a whatever. And one large labor gathering, a young woman got up and said, "Ladies and gentlemen," and he said, point of order, there are no ladies and gentlemen here, just siblings."
Hi, everyone. I've not done this before. I'm remembering my grandfather, Saul Levendov, who yesterday was the 26th anniversary of his death. And I'm just remembering him today. And he was really funny and loved his grandkids, of which I'm the oldest of 4. And, from New York, Brooklyn, and Long Island. So thanks.
So it's the 11th anniversary of the death of my uncle, Stephen Paulus. He was a local classical composer who was well known in Minnesota. So I'm really lucky that people remember him through his music. Unfortunately, it's really hard for me even now to listen to his music, but I'm really lucky to remember him through other memories, his really bad sense of humor, the fact that he would always take his socks off at any family get-together whenever he got hot, and his kindness.
I'm remembering my grandmother. I just recently marked her first yahrzeit last month, and let's see, I had some thoughts, now they're gone. She, in many ways, was a really stern woman who didn't share much of her internal world, but she had the biggest laugh attacks, and I love that she somehow encompassed all of that.
I missed when Rabbi Ariel said Monique Leclerc, because I just knew her as Kromamo. And this is Sego's, my wife's grandmother. She lived in Paris, and we visited her a number of times, and she always had a very warm, big smile, and just loved to see her grandchildren from the States, and made very nice pies.
I'm going to invite us, please, to rise in body and spirit to turn to page 294.
One more, sorry.
Oh, great.
It's also the second yahrzeit of my grandpa, P.J. Porter. Just want to recognize that. He hated group singing and had no filter, but he had this endless curiosity about people, and he loved people more and better than anyone I knew.
Thank you so much. We'll say together, Kadisha Tom. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, ve'alma divrach yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chai echon u'vyom echon u'vchayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv v'imru amen, yehei shmei rabbah mevorach le'olam u'lalmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudsha brichu, Le'ela mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran v'alma v'imru amen, yehei shlam arab amin shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen, oseh shalom b'imromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. You may be seated. Some very brief announcements. First of all, thank you to everyone who made tonight possible. As you return your sidurim to the back table, please separate the song sheets. That will make things easier on our ushers. Thank you so much to Jake and Brian, to Gordon and Sam and Luna, the McComb minion, to Lori Sweet, to our jump in, stand in amazing ushers, Kate and Lorraine, who made it happen, and to Rondi and Security for their steady presence. There's a lot happening this weekend that I just want to tell you about, and then we're going to talk about what's happening for the rest of tonight. So tomorrow morning at 9:30, we have davening out of the box with the one, the only Rabbi Sid. Now, Rabbi Sid said, you have to be here right at 9:30. Please impress upon the people. You must be here at 9:30. And I said to Rabbi Sid, Shir Tikva knows how to show up promptly and on time and in our seats at 9:30. So let us please impress Rabbi Sid by showing up at 9:30. And please come and bring your talis, because he's going to be inviting us to wear talitot and really be inside of an interpretive. I don't know what it'll be. I've never davened out of the box. I can't wait. Then tomorrow at 6 o'clock, we have Havdalah, and that will be a chance both to do ritual and to do learning together about the pillars of covenantal community. And I think we are in the practice of trying to deepen our own understanding of how is it that we belong to one another? How is it that we understand how we belong? And I think I'm very excited for our chance to learn together. The People's Action Coalition also, if you're like, you come to Shul tomorrow and you're like, what am I going to do between 9:30 and 6 o'clock? Well, at 1 p.m. at the Capitol, there is a march. If you're looking to move your body for justice, so hey, if you're not napping, go march. And a reminder that your community is here to support you, so please reach out to your rabbis if you encounter a life change so we can activate the Shir Tikva network of support. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to move ourselves out into the potluck area in just a moment. We're going to bless grape juice and challah there. Then I'm going to come to Zoom and I'm going to bless grape juice and challah with you on Zoom. So we're going to do two different, very intimate blessings. And then we're going to have a solid 5 minutes with which to get food. You know, like we'll get our food, and then I'm going to invite you please to find your way back into the sanctuary. And we will get started here. So eat at your seats is the story. Here. There's tables set up, so if you want to sit at the tables for a few minutes, you're welcome to, but then really come back in, because you'll know it's time to start learning with Rabbi Sid when you hear my voice, but it really is like in 10 minutes. So eat fat. Do what you need to do. It's going to be wonderful. I can't wait. So here we go. So grateful to you. We're going to sing our way out with Bina's Nigun, and you're invited as you hear this song. This is your sign to go get food, bring your sidurim to the table, and we'll see you here in 10 minutes. What a mechaya. Here we go. Ya la 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 ya la, ya la 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 la, ah la 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 ya la, ah la 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 ya la. Oh, people sitting in the Oneg Hall, it is time to come inside and learn with our amazing guest, and come and be in the circle. Come on, our friends in the Oneg Hall. You can bring your food, come sit with us. It's time to learn all together. Come on in right now. Ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ah la 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 la. Ah la 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 ya la. Ah la 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 la. Ya la 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 la. Ah la 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 la. Ah la ya la la ya la. Rabbi said it's a pleasure to invite you up to the bima. I would like to go do a little bit of just a wrangle out there. And I also, so if you'll permit me one moment of wrangle, and then I'm going to come in and introduce you. Is that okay? I thought my nigur would work. Hello, everyone. So I feel like I'm just going to get to give like many heartfelt introductions for Sid over this weekend, which is actually a real treat for me. So I want to talk about Sid as a scholar, and I want to talk about Sid as a leader, a thought leader for the last 40 years. That Sid has been studying, and he's going to tell you so much about his work and about why it matters. But what I want you to know about what Sid has done for the Jewish people is he's studied the way that institutions stay alive and the way that communities renew and stay alive and challenge themselves and challenge each other's to stay relevant and responsive to the moments that they're living in. And he hasn't just said like, oh, it happens or it doesn't. But instead, he has asked how. How have communities managed to grow and change? How have communities managed to face the challenges of their moment? Thank you so much. And then he said, now that we understand the how, this is the way that we're going to teach the generations that come. And so I met Rabbi Sid because I was a rabbinical student, and I got to learn in a retreat that he had organized for rabbinical students where we got to learn with unbelievable rabbis, and we also got to learn from each other what it meant to face challenges and to grow the tools we need to survive and to continue to find our way through. And so I want to say thank you to Sid for teaching your Torah all over this planet and over the course of decades, and for passing your Torah, for being so generous with your Torah, because I get to be a person who returns to what I've learned from you. And, you know, we've had a few challenges. We've had a few challenges together. And so I've gotten to return to the Torah that you have taught me over these years. And it's just such an honor to be able to introduce you to Shir Tikva tonight and then to continue to deepen our work together over this weekend. So welcome. Can we all, we're not a big applause community, but can we actually give like Sid some welcome applause?
Well, it's a real privilege for me to be here with you tonight, this Shabbat Shalom, everyone, here at Shir Tikva. I have been in the building before, but I've never been at a service before. And it was such a beautiful service. There's an expression in Hebrew which says, Mikol Talmidai Hiskalti. I've learned from all my students. So Ariel, who I've known for more than a decade in various guises, from her early years as a rabbinical student to her emergence as a rabbi, and learned a lot about Shir Tikva through Rabbi Ariel. I feel like I know the place, but this is the first time I really experienced it, and it was quite beautiful. You know, there's a teaching that on Shabbat we get a second soul. It's called Neshama Yitera. You may have heard the teaching. And if the soul is our essence, I think I was having that conversation. Is Daniel still here? I had a conversation with Daniel, who was sitting here before. Okay, if our soul is our essence, which actually survives us even after we pass away, because the soul is what you impart to other people. If you have an aura or something to teach, or even your laugh, or there's so much about you that's your essence, people take that in, and even after you die, you continue to live on through your neshama, which gets embodied through other people who you've taught, touched, met, and the like. So on Shabbat, we get a second soul. So we've got this double power, which means that we're no longer in the real world. We're in some kind of meta world on Shabbat, okay? Which my inspiration during the service, which I found so beautiful, is that we're kind of like, this might be Lake Wobegon, like we're in Minnesota, right? And if Lake Wobegon had a shul, it would be Shir Tikva, for sure. And you should know that because of the work I've done, I come to this field both as a student of the American Synagogue, but also as a practitioner. So I've studied and taught and written books about the American Synagogue and spiritual communities and spirituality in the New Age. But I've also been the rabbi of two different congregations. One outside of Philadelphia in Media, Pennsylvania was my first congregation. And then I founded a synagogue in Bethesda, Maryland called Shabbat Shalom Reconstructionist Synagogue, where I'm still quite active as a founding rabbi, although I've not done the hard work for more than almost 30 years now. But I've had the privilege to continue to find Shabbat Shalom as my place where I get to teach, lead services as well. And in the course of my teaching the work that I've done in my Torah around how we create vibrant spiritual communities, I've had the privilege to touch and train easily over 500 rabbis who are now working in the field. And what I will say to you will not surprise you is that Rabbi Ariel is among the most exquisite, extraordinary, talented, and soulful rabbis that I've ever had the privilege to work with, to teach, and to learn from. So you were very lucky. So if this is Lake Wobegon Shul, Shir Tikva, your rabbi is not just above average. She is way, way above average, okay? So let's hear it for Rabbi Ariel. I'm never sure where to start the story, because where I want to get to tonight, I'm going to try and be mindful of the time. I'm actually it's going to be a teaser because I can't do all the things I wanted to do in the time we have, because I understand that Minnesotans go to bed early. I don't know what that means. But I'll do my best. So the various places to start the story, I guess I need to tell you that I grew up in New York on Long Island, and my parents are both survivors of the Shoah. They both escaped Europe with the rise of Hitler. I was raised in a very traditional household. We were members of a traditional conservative synagogue. It would have been Orthodox, but we didn't drive on Shabbat, and the only synagogue within walking distance was conservative, so I grew up in the conservative movement. Ironically, I had an uncle who was a conservative rabbi who knew how unhappy I was suffering in this very strict, straight-laced, square as could be, conservative synagogue. So where some people's uncles slipped them a Playboy magazine under the table, you know, I was 13 or 14 at the time, he slipped me a copy of a book called Judaism as a Civilization by Mordecai Kaplan, which is a 400-page book that kicked off the Reconstructionist movement. It's the kind of like the magnum opus of the Reconstructionist movement that gave birth to it. And that's the book that my uncle snuck to me under the table when he says to me, "Don't tell your parents I gave you the book." And believe it or not, at age, I think I was 15, to be honest, the book is not an easy read. Kaplan was a colleague and close friend of Abraham Joshua Heschel, but they were different in many ways, including the way they wrote. Heschel wrote like a poet, and Kaplan wrote like a philosopher. There's a lot to be said around that, but just that's the point. It's a hard read, but it struck me in very powerful ways, and it started my journey kind of away from the way I was raised in a very traditional upbringing to start to explore the other ways of being Jewish in the world. And that has continued through my life, and I'm still learning. A couple years, in my first pulpit, I started to write a lot of articles about what I was doing. And the reason was because there was this one synagogue in Media, Pennsylvania, which was kind of the place where a lot of rabbinical students from the RRC, the Seminary of the Reconstruction Movement, would send their students because it was the only affiliated Reconstruction synagogue within 50 miles. So there were a lot of students who went there before me, and I was hired as a student. I stayed there 4 years as a student and stayed on 4 more years as after I graduated, at which point I was invited to start teaching at the Rabbinical College. But the reason I started teaching about how to create alternative communities, which is the beginning of my work, which has become my life work, is because when I was hired, the president of the synagogue literally said the following to me when I was hired. He says, listen, we're a small synagogue, you're a talented guy, most of your predecessors were here for 2 years max. We'll be happy if you stay 2 years, then you're gonna go on and do some great things. So all we expect of you, and by the way, it's not an area that's gonna be growing much. It wasn't an area, there's some areas that are gonna grow demographically with Jews, and this is not such an area. So when I got there were 35 families at the congregation. So he says, so while you're here, just make it interesting and make it fun. That was my charge. That was my contract. That was my MOU that started my career. And it was the best way to be hired. And I often say to rabbis, I'm so glad I didn't do the traditional path of working for 3 to 5 years under a senior rabbi to learn all the wrong things about how to create community. Because I worked my way through college running Jewish youth groups and Jewish summer camps. I knew about how to make things fun and interesting, and that's what I started doing. And as I started writing up some of my crazy experiments at my first synagogue, it led me to be hired by the rabbinical school to create a course called Creating Alternative Community. And that, 20 years later, evolved into my first book, which is called Finding a Spiritual Home, How a New Generation of Jews Can Transform the American Synagogue. So I want to start there because in the book, I profile 4 synagogues: Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, and Reconstructionist. The Reconstructionist one was my own because I knew it the best. I had already spent 8 years building Shabbat Shalom, which I'd founded in 1988. And I knew something very magical had happened at Shabbat Shalom. Because 5 years into Shabbat Shalom, 80% of the people who had joined said they had never planned to join a synagogue ever in their life. So something magical was happening there. And I decided that because I wanted to do some work beyond the synagogue, I was also, at the time, building a national organization that was all about using Judaism as an inspiration for activism and social justice, an organization called Panim, which I also founded and grew for 21 years. So I actually had to leave the synagogue because it was growing rapidly, as was my organization. But what I did do in my spare time, I was giving up one full-time job and only had one other, I wrote this book, and the book essentially, I profiled the 4 synagogues, each of which, they didn't come to me easily, by the way. It took some time to discover them. But I wanted to find other synagogues that similarly were finding spiritual seekers who were not your typical people who join synagogues. And they exist all over the place, although it took me time to find all of them. What I did in the profile, and if you're interested, the 4 synagogues you may know, at least of, the Reform congregation was Beth El Sudbury, where Larry Kushner was the rabbi for many years in Sudbury, Mass. The Conservative synagogue was B'nai Jeshurun in Manhattan, which had more or less fallen apart and died, and was revived by Rabbi Marshall Meyer, who spent 20 plus years in Buenos Aires, where he reinvented Judaism as an American, North American, in South America, and then he comes back to New York and revives B'nai Jeshurun to become one of the most vibrant synagogues in the late 20th century, starting in the mid-1980s. The Orthodox synagogue was the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale, where the rabbi for many years was Rabbi Avi Weiss. I became quite close to all the rabbis of those 3 synagogues, and I spent time in each community and profiles of those communities. And what I extracted in the end of the book, the last third of the book, is to say, what did these 4 synagogues from 4 very different movements have in common? because I believe that the future of the American synagogue is not at all about denominations. Denominations have run their course. Now, of course, the people who run the movements have not gotten the memo yet. But they've run their course. Most young Jews do not give a whit about the national movements, okay? It's just, there's so much data out there that proves it. And actually, my book kind of breaks convention by saying that those four synagogues had more in common with each other than they had with the other synagogues in their own movement. Because the rabbis of those four synagogues each decided to go their own way, to follow their heart, and to reinvent their communities, not using the playbook that they were given in rabbinical school. And essentially, what I want to share with you is what that looks like, because although the term I didn't coin in the book, because my own thinking has evolved, the book came out in the year 2000. And I've spent, since the book has come out, a large part of my career has been training rabbis at seminaries in programs like Rabbi Ariel came to. For 13 years, I ran retreats for rabbinical students from 11 seminaries, from Orthodox to Jewish renewal and everything in between. And as of about 13 years ago, I started a national program called CLE, stands for the Clergy Leadership Incubator, which is a 2-year fellowship for rabbis on visionary leadership and institutional transformation. And Ariel, because she's a glutton for punishment, not only had 2 student retreats with me, but she was a fellow in our 4th cohort of CLE back in 2017, 2018, around there? Okay, that's cohort 4. We've done 6 cohorts. And now we just rolled out a new program as of a year ago, which is called CLE, Clergy Leadership Incubator is what it stands for. By the way, it's an intended double entendre, because the word for clergy in Hebrew is klei kodesh, okay? Instruments, vessels of holiness is how you say clergy in Hebrew. So CLI is the intended double entendre, and our logo is a vessel. So the new program we started a year ago is exclusive for our alumni. We now have 120 alumni of just my CLE program, and Ariel is in the first cohort of our CLE 2.0 program. So we've spent a lot of time together, and that's why I know so much about Shir Tikva and Rabbi Ariel. So I want to do, in the brief amount of time I've got this evening, because I want to let you ask some questions, I want to lay out for you what I see as the 4 pillars of what I now call covenantal community. Covenantal community, the word covenant, of course, from Hebrew is brit. What happens at Mount Sinai is that we think about brit, or if you have Ashkenazi pronunciation, you say bris. Say bris, oh, this is about circumcision. No, it's not, okay? It happens to be that we call the ceremony of brit, because that surgical procedure is what inducts a young male child, and now they're already female gender counterparts to a brit ceremony, a covenant ceremony. We're inducting the young child into the covenant of the Jewish people. That's where it comes from. But most importantly, what covenantal community is something very different than the way the synagogue, the American synagogue, evolved. On one foot, under 2 minutes, the history of the American synagogue is that it's gone through three stages, and I'm doing a lot of work to try and bring it to the 4th stage. First stage of the American synagogue was the immigrant synagogue, literally people off the boat who wanted to find ways to be Jewish together. If I use New York as the analogy, I want to talk about it in terms of geography and demographics. So immigrant synagogues, think Lower East Side. You all know that, even if you've never been to New York, okay? That's where you have immigrant synagogues. No building, they're meeting in storefronts, in people's living rooms and the like. Second stage is called the ethnic synagogue, at which point people from the Lower East Side move to Queens and to Brooklyn and to the Bronx. They're still in the city. They're still in areas that are pretty homogeneous, largely Jewish. You might use the term ghetto, but they're living in enclaves, ethnic enclaves. They might have a modest building. Many of the rabbis they hire for the first time were trained in Europe. Still very old worldish. That's stage 2. World War II is a major breaking point. After World War II, Jews in New York and other major cities around North America begin moving out of the city into the suburbs, okay? This is the first time that Jews are living in areas where they're interacting with non-Jews. And frankly, they want to blend in. A large part of the motivation for people being in synagogues is that it was the American way. The classic book written in the middle of the 1950s, literally published in 1955, was written by a Jewish sociologist named Will Herberg, and it was titled Protestant, Catholic, and Jew. Jews were thrilled because at 3.5% of the population, we got equal billing with the Protestants and the Catholics. It was pretty cool. There was really no significant Muslim population at that time in America in 1955. But that book talks about how much faith communities were the ways that Americans practiced their civic culture. And what Herberg essentially says is that people aren't all that serious about religion, but just think about how many members of Congress wear the American flag, or end a speech by saying, in God we trust, or something like that, or God bless America, right? There's something about American civic culture that gives lip service to religion, faith, and God, but nobody takes it all that seriously. The Europeans are essentially past us because they are totally secular. They don't even give lip service to it. But Americans continue to do so. And if you are out and out atheist for years, you were suspected of being a communist. I'm back, if you think about it, in the McCarthy era, communism and atheism, they go together, right? The reason I mention this is because as Jews moved to the suburbs, they were trying to mimic what they saw as the way to build faith community in America. Build these gigantic institutions, big buildings, and go there once a week, or maybe Jews go there less often. Claim that you are a person of faith, because that's what Americans do, but then go about doing what Americans mostly want to do, and that is make a lot of money and have an easy life. Okay? I mean, I'm saying this a tad cynically, but I'm not too far from what's true. This is the third stage of the American synagogue. It's called the synagogue center. The classic, if I want to use a whipping boy, would be Shabbat Shalom in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania, the only synagogue designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. I mention it only because my first year of rabbinical school, I taught at Shabbat Shalom, and I learned the dirty little secret of Frank Lloyd Wright's only synagogue. If you've seen pictures of it probably, if you look at books of synagogue architecture, the main sanctuary has a dome that's made out of glass to mimic Mount Sinai. But this glass dome has leaked from day one. So if you go to Shabbat Shalom when it's raining, they've spent millions of dollars trying to fix it. They don't want to redo it because it's Frank Lloyd Wright's handiwork, right? It's like saying, I like the Mona Lisa, but I think there should be a little more gray here. You just don't change it. So they left it alone, and when it rains, there's a garbage pail in the middle of this beautiful sanctuary. However, the synagogue center is a community which still is kind of the pattern of many synagogues in America, and it has not been attracting people beginning already in my generation. I'm a boomer, okay, if that's not obvious to you. I was born in 1953, okay? But my generation, and for sure the generations that followed me, did not find the synagogue center to be very attractive because it primarily was about, let's look like people of faith, let's not take it too seriously, let's educate our kids for the all-important bar or bat mitzvah, which in Judaism becomes the terminal degree, on two levels. The terminal degree because it's both the last time many Jews set foot into a synagogue, and then on a macro level, it also spells the fact there's no future for our community, okay? And when I wrote my book, I interviewed dozens of people who grew up in synagogue centers who mocked the very synagogue that trained them. So it just doesn't work. So this is all my way of talking about how I got to covenantal community. The synagogue center primarily is built on an American business model, okay? It's highly transactional. People pay what they consider to be a fair market price for a set of goods and services that they need for some part of their lives, okay? And a typical membership pattern has been true for more than 50 years, that families tend to join synagogues when their oldest child is between 5 and 8, time to start school, and they exit the synagogue when their youngest child had their bar bat mitzvah because who needs it anymore? We got the goods and services we wanted, okay? Which is why, over the past 25 years, there's been a major decline of synagogues in America. They either are merging or closing or shrinking. Many synagogues that once had 1,000 families might have 100 families right now, and they have buildings that are 3 times this size. The term that I think is fair to use for these kind of institutions is that they're transactional, okay? And what's so interesting is that today there's a phenomenon called the SBNRs. Who knows what that stands for? Exactly, okay? Well, you're in rabbinical school, it's good. It's the spiritual but not religious, okay? Meaning that when they did polling of Americans back in the second part of the 20th century, and the poll asked you to put down your religious preference or the denomination that you are most associated with, they'll list whatever else. And if you were associated with no institution, you would say none. So back in the day, for decades, there was only 1% to 2% people said none. Now, the fastest growing group in America are the people who are nones. However, they're not nothings. Many of them call themselves spiritual but not religious, saying, I don't want that old-time religion, I want to explore spirituality. And we need to start thinking about how to create synagogues that actually speak to that generation, to that need. Okay. I like to say that the reason I use the term covenantal community is because it implies mutual obligation. You can't pay to have a community that gives you a sense of meaning and purpose. You need to put something into it that's more than just your dollars or your checks. And so covenantal community means how do you create a community where people are committed to some common mission and also committed to one another because we are in this together, because we're a family, we're a community, we're a spiritual community that supports each other. I like to say, how many people know the term social capital? Is that a term people? Great, okay. The term came into well-known usage through Robert Putnam's book, Bowling Alone, which came out in the early 1980s, okay? Social capital, for those that don't know the term, simply means the way we build, well, you know, if you want to invest in business, you need capital, financial capital. But if you want to build community, you need social capital. You need people caring about each other. And Putnam and others who followed him say one of the biggest problems in America is the decline of social capital in America. Who knows what the Hebrew term is for synagogue? No more answers from rabbinical students. Beit Knesset, okay? Beit Knesset, which literally means a house of gathering. But I like to call synagogues that are doing things right engines of social capital. Synagogues that are covenantal know that their main business, more than prayer, more than service, more than social justice, first and foremost is how do you build social capital in your community? Because without that social capital, there is no such thing as community. It doesn't exist. So I use covenantal community to describe what we're trying to go for, and the exciting piece, there's a lot of bad news about American synagogues. I'm a contrarian on this. I think that there's a very bright future for synagogues that do it right because we're in a period in America of serious spiritual decline and decay. Between what Vivek Murphy, Joe Biden's Surgeon General, called our epidemic of loneliness, social media, algorithms that monetize extremism and hate speech and polarization, a political system that's more or less paralyzed from any kind of positive thing, and now with democracy at serious risk, we are in a very bad way. I believe that today, communities that know how to create and build covenantal community is precisely the antidote to the decline that we see all around us. And so I just want to chart out the 4 main pillars of covenantal community. I won't be able to go to it in great depth, but if you're intrigued by this, we're going to do a whole workshop tomorrow at 6 o'clock on these pillars. So I would invite you to come back, but I want to just touch a little bit and then allow you to ask me some questions. So I want to talk about the four main pillars, and maybe I'll give 2 minutes to each, and then we'll open it for questions. Number one, all this is contrary to transactional synagogue-centered communities. Number one, covenantal communities are mission-driven and program-aligned. What I mean by that is that synagogues are places that need to distinguish themselves about how we will be in the world. And I think that the best synagogues in America today that I call covenantal are those that are prepared to differentiate themselves from everyone else because they do one thing very, very well, as opposed to trying to do everything that's maybe mediocre, okay? There are synagogues that are known for doing great tefillah, great prayer. There are other synagogues known for doing amazing social justice. There are other synagogues known for doing great learning. There are a lot of ways to manifest Judaism. One of the most important exercises for synagogues is to have community conversations to say, who do we want to be? How do we want to excel? I was for a time hired to be a project manager for a project in Manhattan called the Jewish Journey Project. It was initiated by Rabbi Joy Levitt, who was a good friend and was for a while the director of the Jewish JCC on the Upper West Side. And I was hired to kind of help build an alternative model of religious school in Manhattan. And what we did was we got 7 synagogues and 2 JCCs to be in the project, and people who signed up for it in those communities could sign up to courses that are happening in any one of these 9 institutions. And each institution had a specialty. And the courses that happened at those synagogues reflected the priorities and the excellence in that particular area. And literally, we made Manhattan into kind of an open space market for religious education, and going contrary to the notion about how many days do I have to go to religious school or Hebrew school, we made the Jewish Journey Project into the most compelling after-school program for young Jewish kids in New York. And if you paid the fee, it was essentially all you could eat. It wasn't you only have to go 1 day, 2 days. You can go every day of the week because we had programs every day of the week at some different institution. And essentially it became a real happening because we allowed synagogues to say, what is your specialty? What do you do best? This idea of being mission-driven and program-aligned is to say, we may not do everything, but what we do, we're going to do with excellence. It's also about saying that the why is at least as important as the what. Not just what do we do, like what happens on Shabbat, what happens on Rosh Hashanah, what happens on Purim, but why are the things that are happening on that day happening? Asking the why question is essential because most Jews today are not simply, robots that you wind up and have, walk in some, automatic kind of way. Second pillar is what I call maximalist or authentic Judaism. Here's another sorry truth about the way the synagogue centers evolved between the end of World War II and well into the end of the 20th century and now even today, because I still argue that most American synagogues in the synagogue center model. Most synagogue centers are function like private ethnic clubs where people more or less look alike, earn alike, live alike, and think alike. And when you go to a community that is that homogeneous, it is really, really boring, okay? Also, it is highly exclusive. If you look at the way synagogue centers emerged, it did not take into account people who were not in straight families with 2 kids and a dog and a station wagon, okay? So if you were single, or you were in a same-sex relationship, or if you were differently abled, or if you were a person of color, all these people, or if you were divorced, okay, or if you were a blue-collar worker, there was no place for you in these synagogues. The question of, who are the people who are not here in the room because they don't feel comfortable, because they feel they don't belong? And there are way too many people in that category because the synagogue center was so homogeneous, and there was almost this oppressive sense about if you're not looking like us and acting like us and dressing like us, you don't really belong. True story I learned when I was writing the book. I was interviewing a woman who was a member of a very prominent conservative synagogue in Midwestern city. Everyone starts with CLE, okay? It doesn't matter. You'll never find her anyway. She tells me the story that she was a person who had a darker complexion. She wasn't a person of color, but she might call herself that today. She was in the bathroom, and someone came in and looked at her and said, "We need more towels." This woman was the descendant of 5 generations of Sephardic important rabbis, okay? But because she didn't look like everyone else in the place, they assumed she was on the custodial staff. That's the kind, now, we're gonna have this whole conversation of microaggressions or not so microaggressions, okay? But the assumptions that are being made in a place that's so homogeneous is wounding to many people who have that experience. And a large part of the notion of, when I say maximalist Judaism, the main common denominator of synagogue should not be how you look, how you earn, and what your job is. But it should be the pillars of Judaism, which is Torah, Avodah, Gemilut Chasadim. Okay? If you're interested in those things, learning, acts of justice, acts of spirituality and searching for God and purpose, that's what brings you in, whatever you look like, whoever you're married to, whatever your job is, whatever your ability or disability might be. Third principle is creating an empowered and regenerating organizational culture. Many synagogue centers are top-down. So you've got the leadership, the rabbi, the executive director who make all the decisions, and essentially if you like what you're getting, you pay your dues. If not, you leave. The most vibrant synagogues in America today are synagogues where the leadership, including the rabbis, and this is the work that I do with rabbis, is how they learn to understand that every person who is in your community has a gift, maybe has multiple gifts. And if you spend as much time tapping and inviting the gifts in of the people who are part of your community as you do in fine-tuning your high holiday sermons, you will have a very different kind of community, which is way more vibrant and will be self-generating because you're constantly learning from one another. And you realize how many people in the community actually are carrying these little sparks of Jewish creativity that need to be fanned into much greater and bigger flames. Fourth and finally, the last pillar is what I call the Kedusha factor. Kedusha is the Hebrew word for holiness, but I don't love that translation. Kedusha means something that's set apart from the ordinary. It's extraordinary. It's another way of saying that the fourth pillar of covenantal community is to see that Judaism is a toolkit for human flourishing. It's a toolkit for human flourishing. And for a lot of people say, like, I don't want any of that old-time religion, but I want to be the best person I can be. If you tell me that there's a way of being in the world that can let me be the best human being I could ever be, I'm all ears, and I'm showing up. There's a reason why Jews who may never set foot in a synagogue will spend tens of thousands of dollars going to alternative retreat centers and workshops and courses that allow them to expand their horizons and fulfill their human potential, okay? This notion that is perpetuated so much in the organized Jewish community that synagogues are simply too expensive, and that's why Jews don't join, don't know what they're talking about. Because Jews spend a lot of money for exactly what synagogues should be doing, and that is, how do you make the practices and ideas and festivals and liturgy of Judaism come alive so that people feel that they are more human as a result of engaging with that practice, that wisdom that's been passed down through the generations. And a lot of it is about messaging. I think synagogues have done a lousy job of messaging what we have to offer. And by the way, Shir Tikva has so many elements of what I'm talking about here. I'm hoping that as I talk about these pillars, you're recognizing some of these characteristics of what's happening here. It's no coincidence that Rabbi Ariel has been, studying how to do this to make Shir Tikva the kind of vibrant community that it clearly is already. But I want to give you just an example about what powerful messaging could mean. One of my close friends and colleagues is Rabbi Amichai Lau-Levi, who started Lab Shul in Manhattan. If you go to the website of Lab Shul, they have a brilliant way of messaging what they're doing. This is their little buzz line, okay? Lab Shul is, quote, artist-driven, everybody-friendly, God-optional, pop-up experimental community for sacred Jewish gathering. Now, you may not have, any interest in your Jewish identity, but if you read that, you say, like, I'm really interested in that. Like, what is that? And people who would never set foot in synagogues, not unlike the experience we had in the early years of Shabbat Shalom, the synagogue that I was privileged to help found and grow, people want to show up for something that's intriguing. Another example of great messaging. People know the name Sharon Brous, one of the leading rabbis in America, started the founding rabbi of Ikar. I've been to Ikar 5 or 6 times now. They still meet in a day school gymnasium. It's not the most aesthetic place. They're now building a building for the first time. It'll be another year or 2 before it's open. So every week they've got to turn a gymnasium into a place that's a sacred space. But their messaging is exquisite. Here are 2 signs you'll find when you go to Ikar. One says, our tradition is to power down on Shabbat because sometimes you have to go off the grid to make room for something holy. I'm going to read that again. Our tradition is to power down on Shabbat, put away your devices, because sometimes you have to go off the grid to make room for something holy. Second sign at Ikar that I love says, change your rhythm, change the world, Shabbat Shalom. Those 3 phrases in that little pithy saying are all commentaries on one another, okay? On Shabbat, you change your rhythm. And if enough people change the rhythm, that's the beginning step about how you start to change the world. And that starts to relate, what we learn Jewishly and what we need to do in the world. So just finally, I want to just come back to the whole notion about Beit Knesset as a notion that synagogue should be a place that builds social capital for these specific purposes, about how we allow people to find their sacred purpose in life and in the world through ancient ideas, ancient practices, and beautiful traditions, but reinvented in the cultural context in which we're currently living. There's a phrase in Exodus chapter 19, right after the giving of the 10 Commandments at Mount Sinai, which describes the Jewish people as a mamlechet kohanim and a goy kadosh. You can look up how it's translated in the typical Bibles. But I like to say that phrase to me is part of the work that I and so many other rabbis who are now in the field of kind of reinventing Judaism are trying to do. Mamlechet kohanim means that it literally means an aristocracy of the clergy, which is not the way you create covenantal community. Do rabbis have great learning? Yes. Do we need rabbis to build spiritual community? Yes. But an aristocracy of the clergy? No, thank you. A goy kadosh means, goy is a term you might know as a non-Jew, but goy literally means, in biblical Hebrew, means a nation, a people. Simply means people. We need to change the Jewish community from a place that is run by an aristocracy of clergy to a place that recognizes that every single person has a spark of holiness in them. And if we start to raise up people like that and give them the power to reinvent community, we'll create exactly the kind of spiritual communities that this country and this world so desperately need. Thank you. Okay, so I'm happy to take any questions, and Rabbi Ariel will come to you with a mic. Just introduce yourself if you don't mind, and I'll try and remember your names.
Thank you. That's up. Thank you so much for being here. I had a question. You were talking about spiritual but not religious folks as a community of people to be reaching out to. And I was, as you're talking about, thinking about converts and how converts are showing up in, at least in my experience, very large numbers in community. And do you have thoughts on harnessing their energy? Because folks come with such excitement and energy to Jewish spaces, and I feel that potentially we're a significant community to be considering, and just didn't know if you had any thoughts.
Look, there isn't a more gratifying piece of work for me in the rabbinate than working with people who want to convert to Judaism, and they bring a tremendous passion. I do feel that in the same, that story I told you about the descendant of Sephardic rabbinic lineage who was thought to be a part of the custodial staff, I think that we have the same kind of, I like to think, unintended discrimination against people who are not born Jewish. You know, we get involved with a lot of insider language, which can be very off-putting, and converts are constantly wondering, like, do they know that I wasn't born Jewish? There's this sense of like, do I really belong here? And it's so tragic because we could get so much more from the Jews of choice who come into our community. We should be putting them on pedestals, not in a negative way, but holding up them as role models for people who take Judaism that seriously. There's so many stories I could tell you about interfaith couples where the non-Jewish couple decides to convert to Judaism, and they're essentially dragging the Jewish partner along with them. You know, like, and some of you know that story. I actually once sat down with a couple that came to see me and asked me to do their wedding. And it was a Catholic woman and a Jewish man. They had already seen a priest. And the deal that they had with each other was that let's interview a priest, let's interview a rabbi, and then we'll decide how we want to get married. So I was not privy to this deal when they came to see me. But it quickly became clear that that was going on. So the woman was still deeply devoutly Catholic. The Jewish guy simply said, I want equal time, but he couldn't give a hoot about being Jewish. And after about 45 minutes, I said, you would do yourselves and your future children, God willing, a favor if you would simply be married by a priest and join a Catholic church. And I believe that, because first of all, I don't get commission. Like, I don't work on commission. I want to help people find a way to find faith that becomes an avenue for them to enrich their lives so they can find their own purpose, right? And in a couple where one partner is serious about their faith, which happened to be Catholicism, and the other one was not, but simply wanted equal time to see one of my clergy, right? I said, you know, you're wasting your time and mine. So it's an odd way of answering your question, but what I'm saying is people who care about Judaism enough to come around and start to take in the tradition are people who we have so much to learn from. We could do a lot more and a lot better with converts, for sure. And I much prefer the term Jews of choice, or Jews by choice, than converts. Because converts, especially these days with the whole notion of with people transitioning and conversion therapy, and it's like really, it's a loaded word right now, so I think we need to be moving away from that term. Please.
Yeah.
Your name?
Yeah, my name is Catherine. I use she, they pronouns. This mic is very loud.
Yeah.
Can we be... Okay. My question is about rabbinical education, because that's something you mentioned you are deeply involved in, both within traditional institutions and outside of them. You mentioned early in your talk that denominations are sort of a dead end now, that there's not a lot of enthusiasm for them, but most of the rabbinical schools still today are affiliated with some sort of denomination. How do you transcend this divide of movements that are not attractive to people anymore, but at the same time are responsible for a lot of rabbinical education still today?
Yeah. So, look, there are some good things happening in the denominational, spaces. I'm simply saying that most Jews don't care about what the label is. If it's valuable, if it feels authentic, if it raises you to another level of the way you want to be in the world, then they're all in, whatever the label is. And I actually think that there's a lot of merging of approaches right now, despite the fact that the movements don't want to go out of business. Rabbi Ariel went to an independent rabbinical school that's not affiliated with any movement, and they're doing an amazing job. And they're attracting a lot of people who previously would have gone to a party institution, okay? There are other non-denominational seminaries out there that are doing a lot of good work. I just think that institutions don't put themselves out of business very often. I just don't think that we should trouble ourselves too much over this whole denominational thing. I'm flashing back to a conference that happened in Chicago in the late 90s. A couple of major Jewish foundations put a lot of money into creating a program to reinvent the rabbinate and synagogues. It was short-lived, as many of these things are. But they invited the top leadership of all the major seminaries in the country who were in the room. And it was weird. It was really weird because you had two different realities being spoken about in the same space. You had some people saying, like, we desperately need a new approach to how to train rabbis and how to build synagogues that are true spiritual communities, what I would call covenantal communities. And then you had the people who were heading up the Reform and conservative and Reconstructionist and Orthodox seminaries saying, like, there's no problem out there. We're doing great work, and we have people coming to us all the time, whatever else. It's kind of like, what world am I living in? Because it takes a lot of time for cultural trends to move up and to kind of send the memo. It's not just a memo. You need to take a club and hit people over the head to say, there's another way to do this. I think a lot could be benefited. The merging of some of the seminaries would be a good thing right now. But everyone's kind of saying, these are my marbles, I'm holding them, I'm not sharing them. So it's a problem. Yeah, please.
My name is Jim. My pronouns are he and him, and I actually have a question for the group here. How many of the people here are Jews of choice? Please raise your hands.
Good question. Thank you. Thank you for being here, everyone. Thank you for being part of the community.
Hi, I'm Michael, he, him, and I'm super curious. So I think the first pillar you said was that synagogues should basically pick a lane, should specialize in something. And so you have been peripherally aware of Shir Tikva for longer than I have, and I'm wondering if, without tips from Rabbi Ariel, if you could say what you think Shir Tikva's specialty is, or if we need to find one.
Okay, so what's interesting is that, when you have rabbinic transition, communities change, okay? Shir Tikva, as with many Reform congregations in the country, is known for its social activism, and it has been that way for a very long time. Rabbi Ariel comes in with an extraordinary talent around tefillah, okay? So you are opening up another horizon, and that's not a bad thing, okay? It's simply because I think different things will attract different people. So it's not like, choose a lane. You said it cleverly, but it's also not fair and not something I would recommend. I'm not saying synagogues can't do more than one thing well. What I'm saying is that most synagogues fail to be excellent because they're trying to do too much. In other words, part of what's going on, another project I ran for almost a decade was a project called Knisa, Communities of Meaning Network, where I got some funding from a foundation based on my last book, which was called Jewish Megatrends, to identify Jewish social entrepreneurs creating new models of spiritual community around the country. I got some funding to build a national organization, which I led for almost a decade, and we identified over the course of those 9 years about 400 amazing entrepreneurs building totally new models of spiritual community that were not synagogues. And what I've argued, and I've written about this extensively, is that those communities are attracting a lot of the people who will never set foot in any synagogue. And they will give synagogues a run for their money, and that's a good thing, because I believe that ultimately, I think synagogues would learn a lot from some of these upstart projects that are doing things in the realm of Jewish environmentalism, or social activism, or serious Jewish learning, or arts and culture. There's amazing work happening in Jewish arts and culture, which has almost no space in most synagogues because it takes a certain level of expertise and production value, and it takes a lot of money, you know? So Judaism is alive and well, but it's happening in a lot of spaces that are not synagogues. That's part of what I learned from my 10 years working with Knesset.
That was amazing. As I'm walking over to Tuvia, I'm going to also just I think this question is really amazing, and I think that that's actually so much of why Rabbi Sid is here with us this weekend, because we actually know. You know, and I think we are in the process of figuring out how to articulate what we know about our community, about why we love it. But I just want to say, I think you're right about our social justice and, God willing, about our tefillah. But I actually think one of our superpowers is in the way that Shir Tikva was founded and the fact that a bunch of families were able to point to a rupture in a community and say, that's not right. It's not right that a rabbi was fired for who she loves. It's not right that this is what's happening, and we're going to do this a different way and form a community that is able to put that Rabbi Stacey Offner, at the center, and to figure out how do we orient together. And I think that initial being able to point to something that's happening in community and say, no, we can do things differently, means, I think our superpower, God willing, is humility, to be able to say, we're going to get it wrong. It's not that it was somewhere else that the bad stuff, like it happens here. It happens anywhere there are people together working, but God willing, we're strong enough to say, what do we do about it? And it doesn't always have to lead to rupture. It doesn't have to lead to cleaving. And I think that's when I think about how we have navigated these many years, then I love getting to be part of it, but it didn't start with me, you know? Like this feeling of how do we listen to one another and how do we discern what is whole and what is broken, which I think social justice and tefillah help us with. So there we go. Is that? I'm coming to you.
Thank you. I'm Tuvia, he, him pronouns. A lot of these trends you're talking about aren't unique to the Jewish community. You know, mainline Protestantism, to some extent Catholicism, historically black churches have experienced similar things. And so I'm curious if there are any like models or lessons you take from other religious traditions that, you know, things from other faith traditions that seem to be working really well.
Yeah, it's a great question. Last night, I literally did a presentation to a group of 20 Methodist ministers about my work, because as you quite astutely mentioned, Tuvia, right? Tuvia's name? Astutely mentioned, these concepts are not owned by the Jews. Quick story, when I was starting this project that I mentioned a moment ago, Knesset, I very much wanted to find some non-Jewish partners for the work, because this is not just about Jewish communities, it's about how to create vibrant spiritual communities in a country that needs it desperately. And I had easily a dozen meetings with nationally known leaders of Christian denominations, all of which were very nice conversations, and all of which said, I'm not going to be your dance partner. You know, it was a nice conversation, it ended. And then, okay, I thought I started something. Then someone sent me through email a small paper written by 2 grad students at Harvard Divinity School called How We Gather. I read the thing and said, like, this is it, okay? I look up their names, Casper Turquile and Angie Thurston. They're in Boston. They're second year of Harvard Divinity School. And I said, you are asking all the same questions that I asked in my book, my last book, Jewish Megatrends. We need to talk. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Boston. We spent an entire day together. And ironically, they were studying people doing spirituality, not in churches or any traditional, conventional religious spaces, but in different places, including places as far-flung as Soul Cycle and other exercise regimens and arts and whatever else. And they came up with a series of principles that were common, and I had already, in my book, identified some of the principles that I didn't use Hebrew here, but in Hebrew terminology, and they were almost totally parallel. We've collaborated now for more than a decade. We're very close friends, and by the way, they've invited me to their gatherings, I've invited them to my gatherings, and we teach each other's constituents, and that's how much this stuff has a cross-cultural power, because it's not owned by any one faith community. It need not be, and it should not be. So I applaud you for kind of seeing that, and I find that to be some of the most exciting work as we start to kind of see what's out there as religion is being reinvented.
So when Yesha koach on this conversation, and I'm so glad we don't just have you for one night, Rabbi. I said, what a gift. And so please come tomorrow at 9:30. Please come tomorrow at 6. I told Rabbi Sid that Minnesotans don't stay out after 9. That is what I have noted, and we are getting there. But I do want to ask, there's a question from Sarah Knautz on Zoom, who asks, 72% of non-Orthodox Jews in the US are married to non-Jews. For people who have one Jewish parent, which options do you think are currently available, and which options do you think should become available?
Yeah, so I think that the intermarriage thing is, we've created a boogeyman out of interfaith marriages. Communities that are welcoming to interfaith couples, okay, are finding that there are so many ways that they can not only be integrated, but that it actually can enrich a community, okay? Usually the gatekeepers of the Orthodox Jewish community talk about these statistics to scare people, saying like, we've got to build the wall higher because we're losing too many people. They're escaping, so build a higher wall, okay? But we know that if you want to create a vibrant community, you don't do it with walls, you do it with bridges, okay? What can we learn from each other that would actually enrich? So the question is, I want to reframe it. The question I heard, as you said, if I got it right, is that which of these options are most available to interfaith couples?
No, it's a question actually about the kids, about kids who are either matrilineally or patrilineally descended. Like, how do they experience themselves as Jewish? What options exist for people to be either affirmed or to go through the process of conversion into community? So, like, just asking, like, given the predominance of multi-heritage families, how should kids of one Jewish parent and one not Jewish parent be welcomed into community?
Well, first of all, I don't think I'm not a halakha gatekeeper, okay? So I don't abide by the notion that unless your mother is Jewish, you can't be seen as a Jew unless you convert, okay? I believe that if you come from a family with mixed parentage of different faith backgrounds or no faith background whatsoever, you are a functioning, thriving human being that also wants to find a purposeful, meaning-filled life, okay? And so we need to kind of let down those barriers and invite people in and bring what they have. Including, by the way, there's so many people who identify as either atheists or seculars, whatever else, who have so enriched our community. And in the early years of Shabbat Shalom, I had a little bit of a crisis because we attracted about a dozen people who were spending a lot of time at an ashram in upstate New York, and were serious devotees of this guru. And I was trying to think, like, are they going to threaten our community or are they going to enrich the community? And before I made the decision, I actually went up to the ashram and spent several days there. And I learned so much. I met so many Jews. And I saw what they were seeing in those communities. And when I came back, I said to each, had a meeting, and I said, I don't fully understand your practice, but I understand the appeal and why it has filled your soul in important ways. I'd love for you to find a way to bring some of that into a Shabbat Shalom. And it's something I know I was not inclined to do, but something told me that I didn't want to build a wall. I wanted to build a bridge. And the community, and they became not only active members of the community, but have enriched us in so many ways because they took another path, a path that most synagogues would never have considered to be in any way legitimate or kosher. So that's kind of how I would respond to the notion of people come from mixed parentage.
Yeah, sure. I think there's so much. That is certainly a question that's very alive here, and I'm grateful for the question, and I look forward to continuing to deepen. So I'm going to say we're going to seal with blessings, recognizing that we, God willing, get to see each other tomorrow morning at 9:30. What I'm going to do something a little bit different, which is, we're not going to do a Zoom blessing. I just want to bless you, actually. We've been in this rich conversation, and we're going to be in conversation together. So may the comments and questions that we share over this Shabbat, may they really be for blessing. And thank you so much, Rabbi Sid, for being here. You are an hour later than we are, and yet you are so focused and so wonderful and offering so much. So thank you. So my loves, we're going to seal in blessing. If you don't mind just getting close to one another or just taking a moment and hugging yourself, we are going to just bless each other. And just know, Zoom beloveds, if you would just accept this blessing to you, you don't have to do anything other than just receive. Hamalach hagoel oti, Hamalach hagoel oti mikol ra, yevarech et hane'arim, v'yikarev behem shemi, v'shem avotai, Avraham ve'Yitzchak, ve'yidgol harav, ve'yidgol harav bekerev haaretz. Yisimchem Elohim kesara kerivka, kerachel uchelea kefraim v'chi Menashe. Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. Yair Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. Shabbat Shalom. See you so soon. So grateful for you. Laila Tov.